Joining me today is Graham Dent, Principal for Dent Consulting Legal, who will be speaking at the 13th Annual National Workers' Compensation Summit on the 20th and 21st February 2012 in Melbourne. Graham, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
First of all, would you please give us a brief update on what to expect from the harmonisation status?
Well, at the moment we're going through a period of a bit of confusion, but it's gradually resolving. We've now got a situation where we have 5 jurisdictions committed to commencing on 1 January 2012. It's Commonwealth, New South Wales, Queensland, the ACT and Northern Territory. Tasmania has passed legislation but won't start until 1 January 2013. South Australia is currently into Parliament. It's still subject to debate, but will probably start about halfway through next year, and Victoria and WA are probably going to be around 1 January 2013 as well. So a bit of confusion at the moment, and it's very frustrating, I know, for a lot of businesses who've been trying to prepare for harmonisation and now have to straddle a number of commencement dates, but that's roughly where we're at the moment.
Why do you think it's important to be on top of the new laws regardless of who you are and where your business is based?
Well, one of the concerns I think that some businesses aren't aware of is that those in the jurisdictions that aren't commencing on 1 January 2012, for example Victoria, WA, South Australia, etc., a lot of businesses there may think, oh look, we've got a bit of a leave pass, we've got 12 months to get ourselves organised. Now in some cases that may be the case, but in others they will actually find that they are subject to, and potentially exposed to liabilities under the laws in the other jurisdictions. So for example, if I am trading with someone in another state and supplying plant and equipment to them, or I have employees attending their facilities to carry out service or maintenance works and provide various other services, then to the extent that I'm dealing with that jurisdiction, I can be exposed to those laws, and that will also entail in some upstream duties. And a very good case example of that was a recent Commonwealth action where a company that supplied boats to the Commonwealth and certified them to comply with certain Australian standards, one of the boats sank, and it was subsequently found the boats didn't meet the standards, and action was taken against the company under the Commonwealth OHS Act as a supplier for failing to meet certain plant safety standards. And the company received the maximum penalty available under the Act at that time, which was $242,000. Now, companies that supply plant and equipment into other jurisdictions, whether it's Victorian supplying into New South Wales or Queensland or various other arrangements, could face that same exposure, and it would also apply to officers in the company if they didn't have in place due diligence processes. So companies need to be aware of that. In addition, it's just sound practice. I mean, these laws are going to come in due course in all jurisdictions. There may be some minor variations to them, but the substance will be the same. And to the extent that our laws, both currently and in the future, are going to be based around the concept of what's reasonably practicable, things like some of the aspects of the Act which clarify existing obligations rather than change them, codes of practice, etc., are still going to be valuable documents even for those who are not subject to the law at the moment. They really spell out and reflect existing obligations in a lot of respects. So I think for people who are thinking that they've got 12 months, I'd really be strongly urging them to get on top of the new laws now and not leave it to a last-minute rush.
Can you run me through the issues in worker representation and the broader vertical and new horizontal consultation duties?
Yeah, one of the things that's happening there is people are getting a bit concerned and talking about the scope of worker has been expanded significantly. What the Act does is change a number of concepts, and one of them is it has amended the traditional concept of the employee to whom we owe a duty of care and replaced that with a duty of care to workers. And the definition of worker has been expanded to include not only our ordinary employees, but contractors, subcontractors and their employees, labour hire personnel, outworkers, apprentices, trainees, students, volunteers and others. Now, some employers are thinking, wow, I've got this huge range of additional obligations. Well, the reality is that in itself that is not a significant expansion, because in various parts of the Act and through various sections, we already owe a lot of those obligations to those parties. What the Act is doing, though, is by calling them workers, it's, I think, removing psychological and language barriers. There are a lot of people out there who still don't understand the scope of their obligations, and some of them are running around saying the sky is falling because we've got this, huge expanded scope of duties. What's really doing is clarifying they already have those duties. Where the real changes are occurring in terms of things like the definitional change for workers is not to whom they owe the duty of care, but the fact that now consultation obligations will apply not only to employees but to workers, so a far broader class of people. Now, in some jurisdictions, consultation obligations already extend to contractors, and certainly a lot of companies that have in place sound contractor management programs will already be meeting those obligations, but it now extends, for example, to volunteers, labour hire, trainees, work experience students, and so a lot of organisations are now looking at their consultation processes and working out how can we embrace this broader range of parties. And for some organisations it'll be simple. For others, for example, like the New South Wales Rural Fire Service and the CFA in Victoria, where they have over 10,000 volunteers, often remotely based and difficult to contact, then it brings in other problems. And that highlights the importance of organisations getting in place agreed consultation procedures, so they're not trying to consult on an ad hoc basis under the Act as required, but they have in place an agreed process which facilitates that and with which everyone's happy. On the broader front, in terms of what's called horizontal consultation, that's an obligation under the Act now which basically says that a business which is a duty holder under the Act has an obligation to consult with any other business in respect of where they have a shared duty. So if I have my employees or my workers on a site where they are working alongside workers from another business, and we have overlapping responsibilities in terms of potential impact on each other's employees, then I have an obligation to consult with that other business. And so what people need to do is to basically look at who are the duty holders under the Act, who do they owe the duties to, and effectively develop a bit of a map or a matrix and say, well, okay, this is where our people work, these are the places they go to, and these are the other businesses we interact with. To what extent do we have overlapping duties of care in respect of our workers or their workers, and what's the process we need to go through really to consult to make sure they're on the same page and that we're not doing things that are inconsistent, we don't have gaps in terms of the way we care for people, and that we work in concert to ensure people are safe. And that's one of the ones that I know is causing business some concern at the moment. Everyone, of course, understands what consultation requires and what it involves, but the question is when you may have contact with many businesses for varying degrees of, I suppose, duration and over issues of varying degrees of risk, the question is how much is enough? And I think in that regard it's important that organisations work through the code of practice on consultation, look at the examples there, and effectively develop templates for different types of scenarios they're going to be dealing with so that they do get the consultation side of it right.
Graham, you'll be speaking at the 13th Annual National Workers' Compensation Summit 2012 on the 20th and 21st February in Melbourne. What will be the highlight of your presentation?
Well, I'll be covering all the issues you just talked about in more depth, and obviously give you an update on where harmonisation is at, because implementation will have begun. But I think the main thing I'd like to get across to people is that there has been a lot of hysteria, there's been a lot of political lobbying, a lot of people talking about costs and dramatic impact and problems for business. The reality is that most of this is not new. There are certainly changes, there are matters of detail to address, but what I'd hope I can do in the presentation is dispel some of the mythology that's building up around it and help people understand that what all this legislation is doing is really clarifying existing responsibilities. And every regulator has said repeatedly that if you're basically complying with the existing laws, then the new laws will become largely a matter of fine-tuning. And so I'll talk about where some of those areas of fine-tuning are required, and one of them obviously will be the area of due diligence for officers. In a lot of other respects, I think the laws are generating a healthy debate and opening people's eyes to what effectively are their current obligations, and I'd hope to be able to dispel some of the myths about what some of those, in inverted commas, new laws are, why they really aren't new, and why people don't need to be afraid of it. So certainly people need to focus on the issues and address them and make sure they're on top of the changes, but it's not something to be afraid of.
Graham Dent, thanks very much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your speech at the 2012 Summit in Melbourne.
Thank you.